We begin here at home as President Bola Tinubu has called for an end to Israeli aggression in Gaza. Addressing the extraordinary Arab Islamic Summit in Saudi Arabia, President Tinubu warned that the conflict in Palestine has persisted for far too long, inflicting immeasurable suffering. He expressed concern over humanitarian conditions in Gaza. Now, President Tinubu also affirmed Nigeria's support for a two-state solution.
It is with profound sense of duty that I call before you as we work to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and realize the two-state solution. This is urgent and very urgent. Conflict in Palestinian homeland has persisted for too long, inflicting immeasurable suffering on countless lives. As representative of nations that value justice, dignity, and the sanctity of human life, we have a moral obligation to collectively bring about immediate end to this conflict. We need to find a new pathway to peace without delay. Nigeria has always championed the cause of peace and cooperation among nations. Our own experiences, domestically and regionally, have taught us that identity politics are no substitute for respecting the nuances of diversity. The path to reconciliation may be fraught with challenges, but it is through honest conversation and deal-making that we can foster understanding. The international community has the opportunity to bear the new resolution.
All right, Nigeria lending its voice to the global conversation around the crisis in the Middle East. Rufai, your take on this contribution?
Okay, so for so many years, we've been talking about a two-state solution. Many years, over 50 years now, we've been talking about a two-state solution. But let's dial back as regards the Middle East crisis. Many maps have been drawn, and it just shows you how convoluted the Middle East story is. In 1916, Mark Sykes and Picot, this French and British, both diplomats, drew the map of the Middle East when France and Britain shared the Middle East. A lot of that was greatly affected when Balfour made his declaration that Israel, a Jewish state, must exist inside Palestinian territory. But most of the map was redrawn in 1967, where Israel took the Golan Heights, close to the Sheba farms, that's on the flank of Lebanon. They took Gaza Strip from Egypt, and they went ahead to take the West Bank from Jordan. Afterwards, Israel has just consolidated. And as it goes, when they tried to cede control a little bit of the Gaza Strip, what happened in 2006, Hamas came in, Hamas became headline. Hamas happened to them on the 7th of October. That has caused this new, fresh wave of fighting. It's not the first time we're going to have fights. We had many intifadas, the Al-Aqsa intifadas and the likes. But the talk about a two-state solution is not practical as we speak. As long as Israel has military might, and they have taken and consolidated territory since the 1967 wars, and they have the support of America, and which they have proven again that they can go into Gaza, decimate Gaza, take territorial control over these areas, Israel will not push for a two-state solution. They had accepted it in the past, but for them it's no longer on the table now. So except the West is honest and tell America the hard truth that you can't continue to support Israel in this madness going on in the Middle East, nothing is going to happen. We just keep deceiving ourselves, and this two-state solution talk is going to be a rhetoric. Because there is no person that will have that military might that Israel has in that region, fighting on two flanks at the Sheba Farms area, going into Lebanon, going into Gaza, decimating Gaza, and that we accept to see those powers in a two-state solution.
Okay, what we're discussing here basically is Nigeria's foreign policy position on the crisis in the Middle East. And Nigeria has been very consistent in saying that it's a non-aligned country and that where the Middle East is concerned, it is committed to the idea of the two-state solution, which in fact was brokered by America at a point, and some people even got Nobel Prizes for peace on account of that. So Nigeria has been very consistent in that particular regard. What Nigeria is asking for is basically peace, reconciliation in the Middle East. Whether that is achievable or not, every country can have its own foreign policy priorities. So I think in that regard, President Tinubu is exactly on point, except we review our foreign policy position in that direction. Now, as to the substance of the submissions by President Tinubu, he's calling for peace, he's calling for negotiations, and he's also saying that principles of international law, a rules-based international order governed by rules, should be respected. In part of that speech, he talked about the right to self-defense, which is what Israel has always been talking about. But he talked at the same time about proportionality. And I even went under the Geneva Conventions and the relevant conventions governing international relations. A country feels that it has to defend itself. You cannot upturn the rules-based international order. That is what Israel has been doing. And I think Nigeria is also right to go to that Arab-Islamic summit in Riyadh. Second time, we're showing up at a similar summit in recent times, and to say that, look, peace is not something that can be negotiated, and all persons involved must respect the value of peace. The third point, which I think is also valid, made by President Tinubu, was the need to worry about persons who are comprador, non-dohor, persons that are not directly involved in the conflict, or the combat. Yeah, okay, that's a more exact expression. Who are now victims, children, people who are displaced, people who are not allowed to basically. I think this is an important point to make, and I think that is preaching in order. The second point is that, however, Nigeria is making this point at that summit in Riyadh against the background of the hypocrisy of the West. The West will come and say, oh, Israel, don't do this. We will not give you arms. But they will do a different thing at the end of the day. So it's the hypocrisy at the heart of the international order that is part of the problem, to such an extent that even the United Nations will seem not to have a voice in moderating the reign of madness in many parts of the world. The third point that I want to make finally, and I'll close on this, was a statement reported in one of the papers purportedly made by a presidential aspirant, one Chief Ideonganaya. I think that I pronounced the name well, maybe not. And he was saying, Tinubu should not have been at Arab Islamic summit. This is a violation of Nigerian constitution. Well, can I say it again for the umpteenth time? That people should, if people have nothing to say, they should keep quiet. The context now is quite different from the context in 1986, when the controversy was about Organization of Islamic Cooperation and all of that. Look, the world has changed since 1986. An alternative world order is emerging. And at a time when Nigeria will say Nigeria is disregarded within the international platform, if you have a president who seizes every opportunity for Nigeria to be represented, I don't think that is something that we should condemn. The main subject here was peace in the Middle East. And I like the fact that our president was in the room and he made his own contributions. And of course, on the sidelines, Nigeria will be able to pursue other objectives that are relevant to our own national interest, which is the main thing. Religion is not the main thing. People should try to get information before they make comments. So, Chief Ideonganaya, I think on this point, you are just being partisan. Sorry.
All right. I think one of the key takeaways from this is, as Dr. Abati concluded, Nigeria being involved in global conversations. We saw the impact that South Africa's leading a case to the International Crimes Court, trying to in trying to persecute Israel for genocide. That was a massive victory for South Africa on the international political scene and diplomacy scene. Egypt has also played a very critical role with regards to negotiations and trying to broker peace and all that's happening in Gaza. So when you look at those two as major superpowers here on the African continent, it's only right that Nigeria also seeks to lend their voice to become part of a global conversation as a leader here on the African continent. Now, the conversation has been largely around Nigeria's foreign policy and where it lies. I was very excited to hear that Nigeria is not the only African country at this summit. You have in attendance Cameroon, Niger, Sudan, Chad, Senegal, just to name a few. So you also have some of our neighbors. Yesterday I'd made the point that I almost feel as though the president should be prioritizing relations with some of our neighbors, some of those who have left ECOWAS. So on the side of this, I think it's going to be important to see what type of conversations can be had. We always know that some of these diplomatic conversations are easier when people are far away from home. So we hope that some type of progress can be made with regards to this situation that's bubbling here in the region. Now, also looking at Nigeria's foreign policy, we know that the president has now taken about 30 trips so far to 17 countries. I took some time to dissect some of these countries that he's traveled to, and I was happy to see that the majority of these countries are actually global South countries, African countries, Asian countries. This in particular is his third trip to Saudi Arabia, the first being the Saudi Africa Summit, and then the other being the 2024 Special World Economic Forum on Global Collaboration, Growth and Energy for Development. We do hope that we'll start seeing some type of progress coming out of these repeated trips to Riyadh, because of course Saudi Arabia has made massive commitments about the type of investment that it intends to make on the African continent this year. So if we are being frequent visitors to that nation, I believe that's an indication of strong ties, and it's an indication that we are lobbying for a big lump sum of that over $41 billion that has been promised to sub-Saharan Africa. Now, secondly, we can't downplay the role of Lebanon. Lebanon has been sucked into this crisis, and we know that Nigeria-Lebanon ties are huge, both on a personal level for the president and on a national level for us as a country. Bilateral trade between Nigeria and Lebanon for the past year stood at about $100 trillion. We know the amount of investment made by Lebanese or diaspora Lebanese in the construction sector and the manufacturing sector. The Lebanese community is a very big player within the Nigerian economy. So lending a voice to this is important because, like we said, Lebanon has been sucked into this crisis. So there is a direct impact to the Nigerian economy and to business in Nigeria with regards to this crisis continuing. So we continue to keep tabs on this, and we hope to hold the presidency accountable as we wait to see the proceeds of what these improved ties between Nigeria and Saudi Arabia can bring for us.